Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm recording on October 2nd. We're going to be going over the news. Might be chaotic today. Yesterday was very chaotic, so I'm sure that today will be less chaotic. But I'd like to go over a little bit of the market, my perspective of what's going on, definitely what happened in the Middle East, and maybe a little bit of my perspective on the debate last night. So please make sure you subscribe to all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube. I have Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Make sure you subscribe to all those channels. I did get a strike on episode 72 on YouTube, so you can't find Gen Zero episode 72. It's about the Taiwan Strait incident. Make sure that you watch that either on Rumble, Bitchute, or Brighteon. This is the reason why you need to subscribe to all my channels, because you don't know what's going to be censored or when. So please make sure you subscribe. Follow me on X. You can also follow me on GETTR. I have 2 X feeds. One is Dr. Paul Cottrell. The other X feed is The Studio Reykjavik. So make sure you subscribe. All the links are in the description of this video. Just go to the description section of all my videos and just click the links, subscribe, follow. All right. I'd like to talk about, before I begin, some products that I have in my store. All right. The last few videos I've been focused on. All right. These are the anti-aging boxes. You can purchase individual items, or you can buy the anti-aging boxes, which are curated in such a way where, you can, start on your journey to building up a protocol for yourself to slow down the aging process and improve your immune system. One of those boxes is called the Anti-Aging Beginner's Box. And in the Beginner's Box, you get the structural nano silver liquid. Just take a teaspoon of it a day. If you're not feeling well, take a tablespoon or 2 a day. It'll neutralize pathogens, maintain that oral mucosal barrier. So that will help to boost up your immune system. D3 is a vitamin that you should take every day. It helps to get rid of cells that need to go into apoptosis. It also is a gene expression cofactor, very important for cellular processes, and it helps to absorb calcium. So I take 2 soft gels a day, 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening. So you get the D3, and you also get a very potent antioxidant, C60. You have the choice of extra virgin olive oil, MCT coconut oil, or avocado oil. C60 is lipid soluble, so it's dissolved in an oil. And C60 is a molecule. It's a 60 carbon molecule that will soak up free radicals. This is very potent. It's very important to take. All right. So the whole idea here is that my anti-aging protocol is neutralize pathogens, soak up those free radicals, and bring down inflammation. All right. So you take a teaspoon of this a day, and you'll notice that your energy levels are higher because your mitochondrial health will be better. Your ATP creation will go up. That's your energy source. And you're actually soaking up those free radicals and allowing for the cell to have less stress. So that means that your tissues are healthier, your organs are healthier, and over time that you slow down the aging process. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Anti-Aging Beginner's Box. You get structural nano silver liquids. You get C60, your choice of olive oil, coconut oil, or avocado oil, and D3. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. So what I want to do is I'm going to start with Al Jazeera. We're going to deal with the Middle East crisis, and then we'll bounce back and forth between markets and other topics.
Of being somewhat complicit in terms of not being tough enough on Iran in the first place. And that is why we're in this place right now. In other words, they've issued threats, but never followed through. And as a result, emboldened Iran.
Kimberly, I'm looking at U.S. public statements over the last few days, and I think they could be described as pretty ambiguous or confusing, because on the one hand, the U.S. says diplomacy and ceasefire, that's what we want. On the other hand, as of last night, the U.S. is saying Israel has a right to respond and defend itself. So how do they thread that needle?
Well, I think it's pretty clear what you heard from the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, when he came to the podium of the White House press briefing room. He was very clear when he said that there will be severe consequences for Israel. The language shifted significantly. There's no question that there is a feeling of anger in Washington right now that Iran took this action.
Excuse me, sorry to jump in, but he said there will be severe consequences for Iran, I presume, right? You said Israel, but I think it was a slip of the tongue, right?
Yes, it was definitely a slip of the tongue, and I appreciate that correction. Thank you. Yes, that is an important correction. So when he said there were severe consequences for Iran, that was a definite shift in language. And so as a result, what we've seen is anger. And so what we have now is the U.S. government consulting with the Israeli government. They're doing not only battlefield assessments, but they're also doing assessments on next steps of what should be done in terms of those consequences. Should they be military? Should they be financial? But there's no question that there is something punitive in mind.
Kimberly Halkett reporting from just outside the White House in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Kimberly. Laurent Rappaport is an investigative journalist and the editor of the Hebrew language news site Local Call. You're in Tel Aviv. Joining us live this hour. We appreciate your time. How would you describe the mood in Israel less than 24 hours after Iran attacked Tel Aviv with some 200 missiles?
I think the mood is quite different than it was, I would say, even 2 days ago. I think after the attacks in Lebanon, certainly after the attack killing Hassan Nasrallah, there was almost a sense of euphoria in Israel that Israel is winning the war, that Israel is winning the axis resistance or axis of evil, as Israel calls it, and that it's on its way to regain its deterrence, lost deterrence from October 7th last year. Now I think the mood is slightly different. I wouldn't say totally disappeared, this euphoria, this feeling that Israel is winning, but certainly there are cracks there. The fact that, yes, there were no casualties in Israeli cities and towns in the Iranian attack, but now the IDF confirms that military installation, Air Force installation were hit. I think, and the fact that we are now hearing from Lebanon that a soldier was killed, I think the mood is a little bit changing.
Laurent, are people, I assume Israelis are discussing amongst themselves or asking themselves, well, what should Israel do next? What would they like Israel to do next? Can you just give us a sense of what those conversations are like? I'm not talking the ones in public with the political leadership. I'm talking about what people are saying to one another.
I think people are very confused. On the one hand, there's certainly a will for revenge, to attack back, to hit back at Iran. People don't understand how come Iran attacked Israel. They don't make the connection between the assassination of Nasrallah and Hania in Tehran and the Iranian attack. So they want Israel to go back and show Iran that Israel is stronger and it can beat back. At the same time, I think there's a lot of apprehension from a regional war. This is a war, first of all, that Israel has never experienced. While a war with Lebanon, that's the third time, war in Lebanon, the war against Palestinian we have for 75 years, and now a war with Iran is something new, and I think people are are a little bit concerned, or even more than concerned. So it's a little bit contradictory, the feelings.
And you said, if I can dig into that a little bit, you said something very interesting, that people don't understand why Iran attacked fundamentally.
They don't understand at all. I heard yesterday the commentators on Israeli TV. It is as if Iran attacked out of nowhere. That Iran is suddenly decided to attack. They don't really.
Futures for S&P 500, 5,749.
And killing of Hassan Nasrallah in Beirut, and of course so much connected to Iran, Nasrallah. So I think people don't really see the connection. They see it as Iran trying really to show that it's to show its force. They don't see why Iran should meddle in this conflict.
Interesting insight there. And how do people feel? I'm sorry, I keep asking you versions of the same question, but I do think it's important. How do people feel about boots on the ground in Lebanon now that we're getting, and I know this is still very new, but we're starting to get first reports of Israeli fatalities in Lebanon?
I will maybe answer the same question. It's a little bit contradictory. On the one hand, there is total support from right to left, to Zionist left, I would say Jewish left, for an attack on Lebanon and ground offensive on Lebanon in order to bring back the citizen, the Israeli resident to the north. And there is a widespread support. On the other hand, Lebanon is a real trauma for Israel. The first Lebanese war, the second Lebanese war. And the moment I think that we will hear about casualties, we heard about one Israeli officer killed today. And
this is what the Rebbe was saying. Don't worry about this. All right? Don't be fearful. Don't listen to the international community. Just get the job done. And so, if the Israelis have trepidation because of what happened in 2006. 2006 variables are totally different than today. The battle space is different. The technology is different. The situation because of October 7th is different. The composition of the people and how they're doing infighting between the conservative movement and the ultra-liberal movement within Israel is different. The whole international community situation is different. 2006 is not 2026 or 24 or in 24. All right. 2006 is not 2024. Totally different. It's 20 years later. Things changed. So get over it. Just move forward and get the job done.
I'm somewhat proud as a Lebanese to be the cause of trauma for, those aside, I think what we're seeing is the sense of
wait, hold on. You know what? We might as well address it.
Okay.
We might as well address it. Israel and Lebanon are they're at war, have been at war officially for decades, right? They never actually made peace. There hasn't been a peace treaty between these two countries. So it's just a reality of life for Lebanese that they have the country on their southern border.
And the reality is that what's going to happen is Israel is going to have more land. The northern front is going to, a big chunk of Lebanon is going back to Israel.
Will flatten parts of Beirut. And all the Lebanese that I know, with whatever their political leanings and sort of political views, that is something that they can't forget.
Yeah, I think it's deeper than that.
Okay.
So of course there is they leveled Beirut, they occupied Beirut, but there is a history even before they entered Beirut. And I think there's sometimes you feel like you keep repeating yourself, but there is the colonization of Palestine, right, which the Lebanese are very intimately kind of connected to, and that you have a large percentage of refugees, Palestinian refugees who in 1948 ended up in Lebanon.
You notice how the liberals, the ultra liberals work. They want to demonize all of Western culture, and that it's all about colonization, and that the oppressors of the natives, right, because of the colonizers, and that Israel's a colonizer of Palestine, the Palestinians, right? The reality of the situation is that the Torah said that there was going to be land, that this covenant, and there was going to be land given to the Jewish people through the sole root of Jacob, not Ishmael, all right? And that land would be, through war, be obtained, and that the temple would eventually get destroyed, and the people would be expelled from the land, and that there would be a return, and there would be war, and that the land would be going back, and a new temple would be rebuilt. So there's 2 temples that have been rebuilt. There's some interpretation if the second one should have been rebuilt or not. But the thing is that there is this 3rd temple that will be rebuilt, and a larger, a greater Israel, but I don't even like using the term the greater Israel. It's just going back to biblical borders. It's not colonization. This thing's been written down. This is not a Western thing. This is not a Western concept. This is something that's been written down for thousands of years on what would happen. If you don't believe me, read Deuteronomy, all right? This was meant to happen. It is not colonization. The Palestinians were just sitting, they were in the land that wasn't occupied by the Jews, and the Jews came back and fought for it, all right? So the mindset of this anti-colonization is that, well, then everyone in America should just give up their land that they bought and their homes and just give it to the Native American. Everyone in Texas, you just pack up your bags and, move to Alaska, move to Canada, because Texas is really Mexico. Who really owns the UK? Is it the Anglo-Saxons? It's the Vikings? Is it the Druids? See my point? It's through conflict, and ones that can secure the land are the ones that own the land. All right? If the Palestinians can't secure the land, then they don't own it. If we can't secure our land in the United States, we don't own it. So you need to secure the land. And that's through war and building up an economy and building up stability. So stop this stuff about this is just some sort of colonization, some post-World War I or post-World War II colonization of the Middle East. Now, was there colonization in the Middle East? From France and England, and right? Yeah, there was. But the thing is, the ownership, the birthright to the land was way before France or England ever existed, like by thousands of years. So if Israel's birthright is to have the land, and they fought for it, it's theirs. And this is the reason why this whole Westphalian world of trying to have, this international diplomacy to reach homeostasis in that region will never, ever, ever work, because it goes counter to what is written in the Bible. Now, that doesn't mean that you do that for everything in the world, but this place is a little unique for all 3 religions: Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Westphalian logic, Westphalian political wrangling doesn't work there. War, secure the land, create prosperity does. Sick and tired of these stupid ultra liberals and this anti-colonialism. Because if you're buying that bullshit, then every single person that has a home in the United States would have to give it back to the Indians.
In Gaza, the Israeli military has significantly increased its attacks across the Strip, killing at least 79 Palestinians overnight and into Wednesday morning. Airstrikes targeted Gaza City in the north and Al-Nusayrat refugee camp in central Gaza. In a ground operation in Khan Yunis in the south, Israeli forces killed at least 53 people, 19 of them from one family. Medical sources say the Israeli army prevented paramedics and civil defense teams from reaching the bomb sites. The funerals have been held for some of the Palestinians killed in central Gaza. An 11-month-old child was the youngest victim. Dozens of Palestinians were sheltering in a school for the displaced when Israeli tanks advanced in the area. Al Jazeera's Tariq Abu Azoum joins us now live from Deir al-Balah in central Gaza. Tariq, one look at the death toll, at least 79 Palestinians killed today across the Gaza Strip, shows us that Israel fighting on the ground in Lebanon, or Israel, mulling its response against Iran, is not stopping Israel from still carrying out attacks inside the Gaza Strip.
Well, literally, Cyril, what I can say is that the Israeli military has gone mad completely after the Iranian retaliation. They have been ramping up the military attacks on the Gaza Strip. We are talking about a very high rate of death toll and casualties among civilians, in particular in the central, northern, and southern parts of the Strip. As you can see behind me now, these ambulances have rushed to a Brighteon refugee camp in order to bring more victims after a residential house that has been completely targeted. At least 3 Palestinians have been confirmed killed so far. But if we look at the city of Khan Yunis, we can see completely that the city there has come under completely a full-blown Israeli attack. There has been a very limited ground incursion that has been completely accompanied by a very intense artillery shelling for residential homes. Medical sources confirmed to Al Jazeera that at least 51 Palestinians have been killed only in the city of Khan Yunis since yesterday evening, while in the central areas of Gaza, we're talking about 25 Palestinians were killed, and in the north of the Strip, there has been at least 30 Palestinians confirmed killed in that very marginalized part of the Gaza Strip. But apparently, and what was so interesting is that there has been remarkable attacks on evacuation centers and even institutes that have been allocated to provide essential care for Palestinian orphans. And one of the latest attacks that was very incredibly bloody has taken place in the city of Al-Nusayrat, specifically that a UN-run evacuation center has been hit just 10 minutes ago, where at least 3 Palestinians confirmed killed, while influx of injuries have been brought to Al-Aqsa Hospital alongside with Al-Auda in the city of Al-Nusayrat, amidst a very clear escalation by the Israeli military inside Gaza, which is continuing till now with no sort of respite so far.
All right, Tariq Abu Azoum reporting from Deir al-Balah inside the Gaza Strip. Thank you very much. It's time for the weather on Al Jazeera. Here's Everton Fox.
Hello, we will start by checking up on the progress of our typhoon just around Taiwan. It was a super typhoon, of course, for a time, and it's still very much in a similar area. It's been stuck here for a couple of days, and it may well be stuck here for a couple more days, actually. So that is one of the major concerns. North of that, we've got this area of high pressure. Around the high, the winds travel in a
typhoon in Taiwan that developed when the missiles were striking Israel. Interesting. Coincidence? Yeah, I don't think so. All right, what's going on with Macron here? What's going on?
Emmanuel Macron, the French president, he's had an extraordinary political year, to say the least, now speaking on Europe and we are told the panel will address what we see in Israel. Let's return to Emmanuel Macron on Bloomberg Radio.
This is why I do support the Commission on Electrical Vehicles with China. And this is why, more broadly, I think we have to protect the level playing field in all the different sectors of our industry. Otherwise, we will be today, let's be clear, we are the adjustment factor in a lot of industries for global players. From steel to car makers and so on, they may arbitrage with the European place. But they just prefer the places where they are much more helped and the level playing field is killed by the current landscape. So we have to correct it either by building the same instruments. December 2022, I did advocate for a European IRA. We didn't deliver. We were too slow, too fragmented, and there's not the right scale of subsidies. But second, we have to restore the level playing field in all the sectors impacted by subsidies, either Chinese or American. And this development would be incomplete without a strong coordinated European response, as well to the environmental, digital, and security changes we have to face. And this is why, in order to deal...
If you listen to what he's saying European first. So if it's not okay to be America first, why is it okay for Europeans first? Do you understand the idea of what Trump is doing here? We need to have our manufacturing in the United States, to have skills, to have good paying jobs, and to have a war fronting, to be able to execute a war. We have outsourced our manufacturing since NAFTA, since the 90s. We've lost that manufacturing. I know a lot about manufacturing, trust me. Trust me, all right? The United States can't make stuff. America needs to start making stuff to have a war footing.
Deliver this agenda. More investment, I will revert on that, because on climate change and clean energy, we invest less than the US, definitely. And by having and building more energy autonomy based on technological neutrality. And this is as well, for me, a matter of simplification and efficiency. That if we want to deliver our climate agenda, we need to be much more neutral.
And if we had a good energy policy by the Democratic Party, which we don't, we would have been exporting a lot of LNG to Europe and circumventing their need from Russia's energy sources. No, but we blew that. Because everyone's worried about the polar bears. Everybody's worried about climate change. Everybody's worried about this and that. We'll spend trillions of dollars to try to make sure we don't raise the temperature 1.5 degrees Celsius in the world. Make our economies less productive and more expensive, and then a volcano goes up. A volcano eruption, and all of that emissions that we were trying to reduce because of trying to, have some sort of clean energy, all right, just was blown up into the atmosphere by a volcano. And it'd take 20 years or more to be able to get back to pre-volcano level. It's a waste of money. Don't be stupid.
French, and he tried to figure that out for us earlier. But we're going to stay with Mr. Macron as he speaks of the European agenda forward, the immediacy that he sees. Again, the president of the Republic of France.
For Europe is clearly to help our players to scale on our soil and our continent, and we have to accelerate their ability to innovate. And the main driver of the difference between US and Europe, I mentioned earlier, is the level of innovation. And part of the explanation was the level of concentration of the market and the capacity of big players precisely to finance innovation. Look at the telco business in US and Europe. Telco is much more fragmented in Europe, much more under pressure of the consumer, so it's good for the consumer, but less in a capacity to deliver a big investment and innovation agenda. The result is that telco industry invested much more in terms of innovation and disruption in the US. And the result is in the productivity of your business and the capacity to innovate and create new players. This is why we have to set up common instruments to build the European industrial policy and strengthen the coordination of our national industrial policies. We have to accept to have European champions and not 27 European champions, and stop with a systematic geographical return and focus much more on our ability to deliver champions at the European scale. And we have to accept as well to be much.
There is a conglomerate or a series of conglomerates, maybe oligarchs, I don't know, but there are conglomerates that are funding him for consolidation of industries. If you listen to what he said, he's talking about consolidation of industries, and he doesn't want free market competition. All right. And he uses fancy words like, you know, to be able to reach scale. Oh, and by the way, you know the problems that we have with our food industry? It's because of big ag, like Cargill. All right. They want to consolidate the farms. They don't want smaller players, and they jack up the price. And then they use their money and lobbying to be able to get subsidies from Congress. And oh, by the way, they also push certain agendas for trade to send soybeans to some other country on the other side of the planet. Big ag is a big problem, but he's talking about consolidation of industries. Someone's funding his campaign.
Because it will depend on the fiscal space, and it's a killer for the single market. We have to invest much more at the European scale, much more efficiently, focusing the money on some key players and key sectors, but on defense and security.
We will leave Emmanuel Macron now giving lengthy comments on Europe, the Berlin Global Dialogue, an important effort there. Stephanie Flanders of Bloomberg will lead a panel there. But right now, we're going to get perspective. Last night, as we sat with the shock of the images in Israel, the geopolitics stretching from the Syrian border down through Lebanon, Israel, all of the Arab states, and over to Tehran, one name came up. He is Mark Champion. He has done war duty in Croatia, many other places, including Bucharest.
All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a market plug. I have the anti-aging advanced box, and in the anti-aging advanced box, you get the Max 35. Take a teaspoon of the structural nanosilver liquid, swish in your mouth 20 seconds, swallow it. It'll boost up your immune system, neutralize pathogens. You get the C60, your choice of extra virgin olive oil, MCT coconut oil, or avocado oil. It's a very strong antioxidant. You get D3, which is a gene expression cofactor and helps to get rid of cells that need to go into apoptosis. Vitamin C boosts up your immune system, also helps with your skin. Structural nanosilver toothpaste helps neutralize pathogens, whitens your teeth, freshens your breath. Good oral hygiene prevents cardiovascular disease and valvular disease. Probiotic helps with your gut biome and metabolism, your overall health. And you get your choice of deodorant. You can pick citrus or peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. This deodorant is for males and females. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas. Very high quality deodorant, has no aluminum or baking soda in it. And it also helps to detoxify your body. So it's a dual purpose product. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the anti-aging advanced box or the individual items. You don't have to buy an anti-aging box to get these great products. You can buy individual items. But if you buy an anti-aging box, it will be cheaper for you. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Are we so far beyond that it's ancient history? Or is there still an American part, a British part, a French part of this fractured Eastern Mediterranean?
It's actually a really good, way to look at it. The Sykes-Picot was, as you know, it was a line that was drawn literally in the sand by a Brit and a Frenchman. And they were basically dividing the mandates that France and, as the Ottoman Empire fell apart at the end of World War I, they, divided between the two countries, the two empires really, Britain and France at that time. They kind of carved up that part of the Middle East, and that's why, the French ended up running Lebanon, and the Brits ended up running what's now Israel and the occupied territories. So all of that, it's a really important reminder that a lot of these boundaries, across Africa and the Middle East really were, designed by Europeans. And they tend to hold simply because the national leaders who run them now, are terrified of what would happen if everybody started to unpick them and to say, actually that these borders have no legitimacy because you just have endless war. But that is actually part of the backdrop where you have organizations like Hamas, to a lesser extent Hezbollah, but ISIS and so on, which are very much driven by the idea of restoring the caliphate and getting rid of these borders and restoring, the caliphate, of which the last was the Ottoman.
So, Mark, you're out with a column today, a Bloomberg opinion column, saying the Iran missile strike was another strategic error. Why do you say that?
Well, in essence, so if we go back to October the 7th, the reason I actually think that when the Iranians say that we didn't devise this, we didn't organize it, we didn't direct it, that this is true, is that while they're always happy to see Israel in a lot of trouble, they were not prepared for the kind of escalation that was likely afterwards, and which has actually happened. They are very afraid of getting into a war directly with Israel, knowing that close behind will be the U.S. They know that they are overmatched by Israel in terms of technology and military, and even more so by the U.S. So when they make these airstrikes, they're doing it because they feel they have to, because there's the deterrence. The escalation has kind of shredded their deterrence and their image of of strength around Israel. So they do it because they have to, but they are not very effective. They really do more to reveal how far behind they are, the Israelis, than they do to show how powerful they are. And that has been quite damaging, and it's why they were reluctant to do this second round and kept talking about it and not doing it until the killing of Nasrallah.
With Mark Champion and continue with Mark Champion, Bloomberg Opinion, Queen Victoria Street, London, his expertise on the international affairs, the geopolitics and geoeconomics of the moment. Mark Champion, this came up at dinner last night. Let me have an expert reframe it right now. What is the relationship of the political leaders in Iran with their theological leaders, the theology that we've seen from 1979?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, in essence, they are the same. So, the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, is the ultimate arbiter of political decisions. Any major geostrategic decision will be made by him. Any major political decision, including who gets to run for election or not to become the next president, is made by him. So the decision to, fire ballistic missiles at Israel was made by him. Beyond that, you do have a kind of a fairly complicated political regime where there is a sort of a pro forma democracy which is there in order to create authority and legitimacy for the regime. So they get upset when people don't vote, for example. And you do have a presidency, you do have a government, which is, normally, not necessarily theocratic. The last, you had theocratic presidents like, Khatami and then Rouhani. But now you have someone who isn't. He's a doctor, a surgeon, and you had Ahmadinejad who wasn't. So it's a more kind of secular position, but it is always subservient to the idea of the revolution, and nobody gets to serve as president who actually challenges it.
Hey, Mark, I guess in terms of the next steps here, a lot of folks are speculating to what degree Israel will respond to the rocket attack. And I guess most specifically, will they target in any way the nuclear capabilities of Iran, which will take it up another level? What's your view there?
Yes, they need
That's
to.
a really good question. And, I don't know. There is a lot of temptation and pressure to finally do it. Israel has wanted to deal with Iran's nuclear program for a very long time. It's been trying to persuade the US to get much tougher and to bomb it. And don't forget that Israel did bomb a nuclear facility in Iraq years ago. And so it is something that they are capable of doing, they would want to do. There's been hesitation because the Iranians had so long to prepare, and they've been burying their most sensitive uranium enrichment plants under mountains, not just underground. They used to be underground. They've been burying them now under mountains. So you need an awful lot of bunker busting bombs to get down there if you can. And it's one of the reasons why there's been a lot of hesitance to do it. If they try and go after the nuclear facilities, that will be, a huge escalation. And we're in a different scenario, different world.
Mark, very generous of your time today. I'm sure we'll speak to you in the coming days as well. Mark Champion at Queen Victoria Street in London. I'll look for his publications on Bloomberg Opinion, get that out to you on Twitter and LinkedIn as well. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keane, we need to regroup here. We have Mr. McCraw with our Stephanie Flanders and Lars Hendrik Roller at the Berlin Global Dialogue, waiting to see if they speak on the immediate news events out of the Eastern Mediterranean. We're monitoring that in our control room. Also, we're looking at the markets opening. Paul, I'm going to say a fractional lift to the market. Certainly, oil does not give way to a lower price this morning.
It does not, Tom. I mean, just the Brent crude, the global crude up 3% at $2.22 per barrel. Now at just under $76 per barrel, Tom, on the Brent crude. And just again, a couple of days ago, that was we were looking to get right below 70 on a consistent basis. So a solid move higher here in crude.
Now we see some yield higher.
Oil is going to be elevated for a while here. For definitely for a few days, but maybe a few weeks.
Commitment of France historically to the Middle East. We have a commitment to Friday at 8:30 a.m. At 8:30 a.m. We will be here. It's job.
S&P 500 is trading below 5,700. It's trading at 5,694 at the moment. So it's stabilized. It's not a real sell-off or anything. It's relatively stabilized, but we'll see what happens. I don't think Israel is going to do some sort of major strike against Iran during Rosh Hashanah. So that starts tonight. So I don't think they're going to do that. Would they maybe do a strike in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which is the 10 day, in between 10 days? Maybe.
Is definitely a candidate for being irrelevant, essentially, because of the port strike and the Boeing strike and the people who are going to be out of work in Florida, North Carolina. It is possible we come up with a negative print. I was talking about it this morning with some of the people. Basically, you could have a report that is so bad that nobody pays attention to it. And this comes 4 days before the election, because the unemployment rate won't be affected by any of those things. It's only the job count. And if we have unemployment doesn't move a lot in October and we see a negative print for jobs created, people will probably I mean, the Fed will obviously, but people will probably say, well, this is just an anomaly and we can look through it.
So I guess the one of the issues is the port strike. Obviously, any better analysis or any more updated analysis you're seeing coming out of Wall Street and global Wall Street about kind of the impact maybe on this economy?
Well, basically everybody's coming up with about the same numbers, somewhere between $3 and $7 billion a day in impact. I would imagine that we're on the low side right now. As this goes on, we'll get to the higher side as backups continue and the length of time that products sit offshore or in warehouses continues. It's probably not going to be something that the American consumer notices in the short run, because companies brought in so much stuff ahead of time planning for this, that for the next few weeks, we'll have everything but, as Lisa Abramowitz was complaining this morning, bananas.
Right.
She said, bananas are important, and they are. And so, those are the kind of things, perishable food, that some of it might be in short supply, but gasoline and oil are not handled by these port workers.
Where's the whisper number for Friday? Just vaguely.
Oh, well, I can actually give you a number on that. I'll look up the function WHISGO, WHISGO on Bloomberg, and the number is 139.
So way below
survey is 150. Yeah, but we don't have a lot of people who have put in their estimates yet, because the folks on Wall Street are all who don't have to put out, as analysts do, their forecasts, are all waiting to see what happens. We got the ADP numbers today. We got some other numbers tomorrow, the ISM services numbers. So we'll have a much better feel for what Wall Street thinks when we get to Friday morning.
What's your biggest mystery now? Folks, if you can see McKee's desk, first of all, to the left, he has a shrine to the Boston Red Sox, and to the right, a shrine to the Denver Broncos, who I believe defeated the New York Jets soundly. It was by 1 point. And in the middle, he's got 47 research papers from the National
U.S.
Association
September private employment rate.
What's your biggest mystery?
Rises 100.
I think the biggest mystery is
estimate
how much does the economy slow, given all of the things swirling around. We just don't know. Obviously, this morning, there's been a lot of discussion of what happens with oil prices because of the Middle East. We have no idea. Javier Blasa, our brilliant oil columnist, suggesting that we're going to see prices go down significantly going forward. But this all depends on what happens there. And oil is important, not just for inflation, but because it signals something about the industrial business.
China, I got 1 minute. We had is there follow-on anticipated in terms of monetary and fiscal announcements?
I don't think analysts are expecting a whole lot in the short run. It'll depend on how the economy reacts, not just in the short term for consumers, but do banks and others ramp up lending? Do communities, cities ramp up lending and business activity?
And now, folks, a conversation with Dr. Mike. I am so scarred from 1986 that I can't watch the wonderful New York Mets in the postseason. Do you feel the same way?
Let me do another plug here, but before I do that, with China, they have major decline in economic activity. And I think they're still reeling from their real estate problems. Right? They overbuilt. Their people are, companies are pulling out of China. So they have domestic activity that's going down. They have foreign exports, their exports going out to foreign countries going down. So they do this major stimulus package to try to bolster up the economy. The question is, can it be bolstered? Now you got to remember they have a declining population because of the one child policy. There's decoupling with the supply chain, where the United States is moving companies out of China and into other countries or into the United States for manufacturing. So this may be a slow spiral downward for China. I don't think that their stimulus program is really going to be that robust to be able to really have them become you know, the 5, 6, 8, 10% GDP, you know, year over year increase. I don't see that happening. I think that they're going to have financial problems. And before the Middle East started having a lot of problems recently, oil was starting to go down because of the lack of demand and activity in China. So Brent was starting to fall and go below $70 a barrel. Then this whole Hezbollah Israel fight started bringing oil up a little bit. And then the Iranian missile launch yesterday really climbed oil. So now we're at $75, above $75 a barrel for Brent crude. All right, while because of the lack of demand in China, Brent crude was going below 70. So oil is because of the instability. The oil increases because of the instability in the Middle East, not demand in China. So, you know, keep that in mind. I don't see China getting out of the doldrums that they're in. They're kind of in their own like Lehman kind of situation. And they don't want to telegraph it though. So, you know, keep that in mind. I have a deluxe box, an anti-aging deluxe box. And in the deluxe box, you get everything that you get in the advanced box, but you get more products. So you get the Max 35, the C60, your choice of different oils, D3, vitamin C, your choice of deodorant, probiotic, toothpaste, structural nanosilver toothpaste, and in the deluxe box, you get the resveratrol. Resveratrol is important to get rid of senesced cells. Senesced cells stop dividing. They have short telomeres and they collect toxins and garbage and you know, start having problems with reactive oxygen species and all this stuff. So you want to get rid of those cells. Resveratrol helps to get rid of senesced cells. In addition, it helps with your mitochondrial health, and it's synergistic with C60 because it's an antioxidant. So it's antioxidants, bringing down inflammation, taking antioxidants and neutralizing pathogens is a major part of boosting up your immune system and slowing down the aging process. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the anti-aging boxes. This one that I just went over is the deluxe box. So if you don't want to get an anti-aging box, you can buy the products individually. That's up to you. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Link is in the description of this video and all my videos. All right, let's go to Al Jazeera and see what's going on in the Middle East.
Situation is escalating in the north. There are several incidents that actually took place. There was one in the morning and one later in the afternoon, but we're still waiting for more confirmation from the Israeli military.
And Handa, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is holding a security meeting with his security chiefs. Do we know what that's about? Do we know anything that might transpire about Israel's response to the Iranian attack?
That's right. Benjamin Netanyahu meeting with his defense minister, Yoav Gallant, and the top security chiefs in the country, including the army chief of staff, the heads of the Shin Bet, and the Mossad, that's the internal and external security agencies in Israel.
Netanyahu has said that Iran made a big mistake and there will be a price to pay. All of the rhetoric from Israel is pointing towards a response to Iran. But the Iranians have said that they don't want this escalated. They do not want a bigger war throughout the region, but the Israelis have said that they are going to retaliate. Let's recall what we saw back in April when there was actually a larger Iranian attack on Israel. The Israelis have responded in sort of a muted way because of all this pressure from the United States and other allies. But this time, the feeling in Israel is quite different given the circumstances that are escalating in many other parts of the region, including Lebanon. But the Israelis have said certainly they are going to respond at a time and place of their choosing.
Hamda Salhout reporting from Amman. Jordan, thank you very much. The Israeli army has broadened its evacuation orders for residents in southern Lebanon. The latest directive now includes 41 towns and villages. They're instructing residents from these places to move north of the Al Wali River, which is showing up in blue on your map, and it extends several kilometers beyond the UN proposed buffer zone, which was introduced after the 2006 conflict. That zone stops at the Litani River. Al Jazeera's Imran Khan joins us now live from Hasbaya in southern Lebanon. Imran, let's start with what you know about the fighting. Hezbollah says that it repelled Israeli troops near the border. It says that it ambushed them and inflicted damage. What do you know?
Biblical scholars, based on Numbers and Ezekiel. I have a picture on my X feed of what those boundaries would have been in the northern area. And Israel goes way into, during this time, the border system that's described in Numbers and Ezekiel go way north into Lebanon. All right. And like I said, these incursions is going to set in motion the resetting of the biblical borders for Israel. All right. It's not going to be like snap of the fingers. It's not going to be tomorrow, right? But what it's setting in motion, the actual resetting of the borders, because this is tied to bringing back the rebuilding of the temple. Now, what I don't understand is why they haven't sacrificed the red heifers yet. There may be some reason. Maybe they're going to do it soon. I don't know. I thought that they were going to would have done it already. So I'm surprised, assuming that they didn't do it. But yeah, my understanding is it has to be at Mount Olive, and it would be in the open, and you would see that it would be sacrificed and burnt. It takes more than 24 hours to burn the carcass. So you would have seen this on Mount Olive. So it doesn't look like they did it. So why? I don't know. Is there some Kabbalistic reason why? Are they afraid? I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. But you got the red heifers. You got this military situation in the Middle East that looks like that Israel is gaining ground. All right. And that is creating conflict with its neighbors. And if you take a look at that picture that's on my X post, about the Israel borders based on Ezekiel or Numbers, it's way into the north. So you can kind of see this is playing out. All right.
To Marjung to Kalkabot Road, that's been struck 3 times in the last 48 hours. Every time the Lebanese army engineers repair it, Israel hits it again, making it very difficult for people to travel along that road. Not just because it's been damaged, but people don't know when the next airstrike is going to come next. Now, in that attack, a Lebanese army engineer was actually injured. That's actually a very serious incident for the Lebanese army.
Imran Khan reporting from southern Lebanon. Thank you very much. And let's bring in Gabriel Elizondo, who is at the UN headquarters in New York. Gabe, so I was just prefacing that we're going to be carrying live some of the speeches from the UN Security Council meeting. What are you expecting? What's it about?
Yeah, this is an emergency meeting
I'm
that
gonna
was
have an
called by
interesting thing
several
about this.
Security Council members, primarily though France, but also Iran and Israel.
Okay, Gabe, sorry about that. This is the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres.
Exactly 1 week ago, I briefed the Security Council about the alarming situation in Lebanon. Since then, things have gone from bad to much, much worse. As I told the Council last week, the Blue Line has seen tensions for years. But since October, exchanges of fire have expanded in scope, depth, and intensity. I stated that almost daily exchanges of fire by Hezbollah and other non-state armed groups in Lebanon and the Israel Defense Forces are in repeated violation of Security Council Resolution 1701. I emphasize that.
Do you think that the UN is going to get a blessing on reprimanding Israel right before Rosh Hashanah? Do you really think that's a smart idea? See what I'm saying? Everyone is being tested. I said this on October 7th. People are going to be tested. The United States is going to be tested as a country. Individuals in the United States are going to be tested based on their behavior during this crisis. You know, the ultra liberals lost. The whole DEI thing started collapsing. It collapsed like nothing because of what was going on campus with the anti-Semitism and the pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian crap. All right, and the whole DEI thing just evaporated. All right. Well, don't you think something bad's going to happen to the UN, or maybe to individuals like this? Reprimanding Israel, which is literally following what was predicted in Deuteronomy? No, I don't think so. I don't think this is going to. You can see that the test is happening. Are you Esau negative? Or are you Esau positive? Because if you're Esau negative, you're going to die. You're going to die. You will die. There's going to be such a curse, and there's going to be such a curse, and there's going to be such destruction that soul root will die off. And you're seeing it playing out right now with the UN. Reprimanding Israel right before Rosh Hashanah. Stupid. These people are jackasses.
Madam President, civilians are paying a terrible price, which I utterly condemn. Since last October, more than 1,700 people have been killed in Lebanon, including over 100.
People would not be killed if the job was done and the international community didn't create these artificial ceasefires in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, the 2020s. The international community has failed. And the Ribby, and I did a video yesterday about it, and the day before, the Ribby warned people not to go down this route, that it would get worse. And here we are. And now the international community is blaming Israel. The internet, this is the facts. The international community failed, and that there's more destruction and more collateral damage because of their bullshit ceasefires.
Madam President, yesterday, Iran launched approximately 200 ballistic missiles towards Israel. It stated it was in response to the killings of Hassan Nasrallah and the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps Commander Abbas Nilfolushan last week, as well as that of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran in July.
You know, I'd really like to know, is this UN Secretary General that's talking right now? I wonder how, while he's in New York, how many horrors he's seeing throughout the week. Because the prostitution industry really makes a lot of money during the General Assembly.
Been obvious yesterday in the context of the condemnation I expressed, I again strongly condemn yesterday's massive missile attack by Iran on Israel. And these attacks, paradoxically, do nothing to support the cause of the Palestinian people or reduce their suffering. Almost 1 year has passed since the atrocious 7 October act of terror by Hamas and the taking of hostages. And since last October, Israel has conducted in Gaza the most deadly and destructive military campaign in my years as Secretary General. The suffering endured by the Palestinian people in Gaza is beyond imagination. At the same time, the situation in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, continues to deteriorate with Israeli military operations, construction of settlements, evictions, land grabs, and intensification of settler attacks, progressively undermining any possibility of a two-state solution. And simultaneously,
why do we assume that the two-state solution is what God wants? I don't remember seeing anywhere in the Bible saying that it's a two-state solution. This is a modern construct that is actually antithetical to what is written in the Bible. Now, do you think it's all going to play out really well? I don't think so.
Conditional release of all hostages, the effective delivery of humanitarian aid to Palestinians in Gaza, and irreversible progress to a two-state solution. It's high time for a cessation of hostilities in Lebanon, re-election towards full implementation of Security Council resolutions 1559 and 1701, paving the way for diplomatic efforts for sustainable peace. It's high time to stop the sickening cycle of escalation after escalation that is leading the people of the Middle East straight over the cliff. Each escalation has served as a pretext for the next. We must never lose sight of the tremendous toll this growing conflict is taking on civilians. And we cannot look away from systematic violations of international humanitarian law. This deadly cycle of tit-for-tat violence must stop. Time is running out, and I thank you.
Je remercie le secrétaire général de son exposé et je donne maintenant la parole aux membres du Conseil qui souhaitent faire une déclaration. Je donne maintenant la parole au représentant de la France.
Madame la Présidente, je remercie, je veux redire, le plein soutien et toute la confiance de la France.
Satan gets its energy from the negative side of Esau. And Satan doesn't want Esau to be split because it's easier to kill off Esau negative and the energy source for Satan. So what Satan wants is to keep Esau positive and negative together and stay entangled. So good and evil are entangled and Satan survives. What does that mean? A two-state solution is what Satan wants because what it does is it keeps the entanglement. So what happens is that you have quote international recognition of Palestine, right? Of this two-state solution. And what happens is now Satan is entangled in the Promised Land with the problems with the West Bank and Gaza and the Golan Heights. So it doesn't allow for the natural borders to go to biblical times. If you don't have the two-state solution, you're increasing the probability of having Esau split, go positive and negative. The positive Esau aligns with Jacob and Ishmael because of repentance, and the negative is killed off, and Satan's energy source is killed. It's cut off. Satan wants a two-state solution and is using the UN. Do you think it's just this camera in the center of that arc where all these people are sitting? It's just a coincidence. There's one eye moving around. Satan is working right now in that. I know this sounds crazy, all right, but the soul, it's not even a soul. The energy of Satan, the entity. I don't even know how to describe it, but it's an entity, all right, but it's not physical because it's at a different plane. But there's an entity that needs energy, and that energy force is from Esau, and it gets its energy force from Esau negative. But as long as Esau negative and positive are together, it's still sucking up the energy from Esau negative. Now, how this all happened is that Esau and Jacob were twins. So they had an energy force coming from their mother, right? Through the umbilical cord. So it's enwrapped, it's tied together. So Esau was getting energy from Jacob, and Jacob was getting energy from Esau. All right, and then they're born, and they were split. But Esau negative and positive soul roots still existed. And that's where Satan's coming from. The UN doesn't want the split. These people probably don't even know that they're being manipulated. All right. Satan is using the UN to keep the entanglement. One of the manifestations of the entanglement is the two-state solution. I am not wrong about this. This is you got to think in like 4 or 5 dimensional to see this. You think it just on this plane, you're not gonna see what I'm seeing. You know, it's like if you look at a 2D drawing, all right, and you just see circles, right? But if you look at a 3D, you might actually have a cylinder, or you might have some other, complex geometry. You look at it 4-dimensional, it may be even more complex. You look at 5-dimensional, it's even more complex. So if you have a system that doesn't seem to make sense at a lower dimension, you need to look at it at a higher dimension, more dimensional, to be able to try to understand what is going on, because there are more variables involved. And that is exactly what's happening here. Satan is working through the UN to try to push a two-state solution because it allows for the entanglement to take hold. You think you can have a two-state solution and have the Temple Mount rebuilt? Do you think a two-state solution is going to allow for the borders to go to biblical times? Based on definition of the two-state solution, it doesn't allow it to go to biblical times. Do you think Satan wants or doesn't want what the Bible has projected out? Obviously it doesn't, because it is predicted that he dies, or the entity dies. How? By killing off Esau negative. God damn it.
And Hamas to agree the ceasefire deal on the table, to choose peace and bring this chaos to an end. Peace, not
war. Chaos, no chaos. Peace and no chaos. Satan wants, quote, peace, so it can't be disentangled.
Urgently to gather support for a political solution to this crisis. Only a ceasefire in Lebanon and Gaza would create the space to agree a political plan consistent with UNSCR 1701 that allows for the sustainable return of displaced Israeli and Lebanese civilians to their homes. Innocent civilians in Israel and in Lebanon have been displaced from their homes for too long already. The only way they will return is through a sustainable peace across the blue line. The conflict in Lebanon is causing devastating consequences for civilians, especially for women and children, and draws us closer.
There will be no peace
to a wider
until
regional
Satan
conflict.
is destroyed.
President, we cannot let Lebanon become another Gaza. With mounting civilian casualties and hundreds of thousands of displaced people, all parties must do everything possible to protect civilians and fully respect international humanitarian law. A widening of the conflict is in no one's interest. The actions taken now will impact
Israel cannot be fearful and needs to take land that is biblically prescribed. Don't be hubris, don't be fearful, and get the job done. And a big part of southern Lebanon is actually Israel. Why do you think?
Middle East.
Why do you think that there are so many Christians in that area? Because what's going to happen is that Israel is going to subsume Lebanon. And there is an alignment between Jews and Christians.
Let's bring in Gabriel Elizondo, who's at the UN headquarters in New York. Gabe, before you tell us sort of the headlines of what we just heard and what stood out to you, can you explain what exactly is this process that we're watching at the UN? What is the purpose of it?
Yeah, good question. This is an emergency meeting by the UN Security Council, and it was requested by several member states. Number one, France, who's a permanent member of the Security Council, of course, but also Iran and Israel also called for an emergency meeting of the Security Council. They are not members of the Security Council, of course, but they called it for different reasons. Israel called it in response to Iran's missile attack on Israel. Of course, Iran called this emergency meeting, or requested, I should say, an emergency meeting because of Israel's missile strikes on Lebanon. So there's a lot of players involved here. I should mention that Lebanon will be speaking at this meeting as well, as will Iran and Israel as well. So that is really the purpose of this meeting. It was scheduled late last night.
Iran has been saying to the general public that the great Satan is. I'm going to prove my point here. Okay, follow my logic. Iran says that U.S. is the great Satan and Israel is the little Satan. Okay. From Esau's negative point of view, remember there are these soul roots. Jacob's soul root, Esau, but Esau splits in does repentance. Part of it does repentance. And there is Ishmael. All right. Ishmael is primarily Saudi Arabia. All right. I'm broad brushing this. Jacob is primarily Israel. But there are other countries that have Jacob's soul root with a little bit of Esau. Okay. Now, from Esau's negative point of view, what is negative, they think is positive, and what everything else is negative. So Esau negative, from Iran's point of view, from the theocracy point of view, they think they're positive. And so they think that their negative force, that they think that the opposite force of them is negative. Now, the United States and Western culture is tied to Esau, positive. All right, but it's an opposite force from Iran. So it views itself as the most powerful, not Jacob. So it views the positive Esau force of the United States, which from their perspective, from Iran's perspective, it's negative. All right, and they say they're the great Satan. and how Jacob, from their perspective, from Iran's perspective, from Esau Negev's perspective, because it's the soul root of Esau and it thinks it's more powerful, they're saying that Jacob is the little Satan, the little Satan. But it's that's from their perspective. From Jacob's perspective, the strength of the covenant allows for the soul root to be stronger. All right. So this is the reason why you're hearing, I mean, Iran saying little Satan and greater Satan, they're not crazy. They're not crazy. It's just they're telling you from their perspective, from the negative soul root of Esau.
Language of the UN to justify their actions.
Yeah, that's right. But this is a body that is guided by the UN Charter. And of course, the UN Charter is very clear, but how it is interpreted is in the eye of the beholder. And I think we're going to.
It's very clear, but it's left for interpretation.
U.S. Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield. So we'll be standing by for that.
Doesn't sound very clear to me.
You might want to go to her here in the next minute or so, and maybe we can pick up afterwards.
Absolutely. Let's listen.
Conclusion of your presidency during the month of September. I wish to thank Secretary General GETTR for his briefing today. Colleagues, yesterday, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, launched nearly 200 ballistic missiles at Israel. Tragically, there has been a confirmed death of a Palestinian civilian in the West Bank. Iran's stated intention was to avenge the deaths of 2 IRGC-supported terrorist leaders and an IRGC commander by inflicting significant damage and death in Israel. Thankfully, and through close coordination between the United States and Israel, Iran failed to achieve its objectives. This outcome does not diminish the fact that this attack, intended to cause significant death and destruction, marked a significant escalation by Iran. It does not negate the need for immediate council action. This is a moment for this council to speak out with one voice and condemn Iran for its unprovoked attack against another member state, and equally important, to impose serious consequences on the IRGC for its actions. Colleagues, in a broad sense, Iran was complicit in the October 7th attacks on Israel through its funding, training capabilities, and support for the military wing of Hamas. And after Hamas's horrific attack carried out nearly a year ago today, the United States sent a clear message to Iran. Don't exploit the situation in ways that would risk propelling the region into a broader war. The IRGC flagrantly and repeatedly ignored this warning by encouraging and enabling the Houthis in Yemen to disrupt global shipping and launch attacks against Israel, by supporting militant groups in Syria and Iraq, which repeatedly attacked American forces engaged in the fight against ISIS, and by arming and encouraging Hezbollah after its former leader, Nasrallah, made the decision on October 7th to open a northern front against Israel. There can be no doubt Iranian support to regional proxies has directly contributed to the crisis in Gaza and Lebanon. At the center of Iran's efforts since October 7th to sow chaos and threaten regional stability is the IRGC, which has repeatedly flouted and violated this council's resolutions. I can't believe I have to say this, but I will, because the IRGC and its allies are out there peddling propaganda. The decision to launch nearly 200 ballistic missiles at Israel was not in any way defensive. The IRGC was not protecting Iran from threats from another member state. Instead, the IRGC was acting in solidarity with Hezbollah after the killing of Nasrallah, who led a terrorist group that has the blood of thousands of Americans, Lebanese, and Israelis on its hands. I can think of no starker example of state support of terrorism than launching ballistic missiles to avenge the death of a terrorist leader. It is indefensible and it is unacceptable. And we have a collective responsibility as members of the Security Council to impose additional sanctions on the IRGC for supporting terrorism and for flaunting.
It's not about sanctions. It's about cutting the head off of the theocratic apparatus that means killing the Ayatollah. And it means destroying the nuclear weapon capability of Iran. This has to happen. If this doesn't happen, the Western world is going to have major problems in the future. Now, if you're not going to do it now, when the hell are you going to do it? Let me go to commercial. This is PNN. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the anti-aging deluxe box. I'm sorry, the super deluxe box. Now, in the super deluxe box, you get the structural nano silver liquid max 35. You get the C60 strong antioxidant. D3, get rid of cells that need to go into apoptosis. Vitamin C, improve your immune system. Probiotic, improve your gut health. Toothpaste, structural nanosilver toothpaste, the best toothpaste you can get. Resveratrol to get rid of senescent cells and improve your mitochondrial health. Your choice of deodorant, peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, or citrus. The deodorant is for males and females, and it helps to detoxify your body, made from essential oils from the Himalayas. You also get ashwagandha root. Brings down cortisol levels, brings down glucose levels, and lowers inflammation. Vitamin B complex, very important for cellular metabolism. Turmeric, bring down inflammation, and it's an antioxidant. And omega-3, really important. Why? It keeps those red blood cells from sticking together. And that's a problem in the post-2020 crisis. And by the way, this also helps to bring down your LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. So it's improving your lipid profile. So you have better cardiovascular health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the anti-aging deluxe box, super deluxe box that I just went over. You can get the anti-aging beginners box, the anti-aging advanced box, the anti-aging deluxe box, or the one I just went over, the super deluxe box. You can buy these products individually, like the turmeric individually, or, you know, if you don't want everything in the box, just buy what you want. It's up to you. All right. But that you do get it. You do get a discount by buying it in these bundles. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The whole idea is to neutralize pathogens, soak up those free radicals, and bring down inflammation. You neutralize pathogens with the structural nanosilvers. You bring down the reactive oxygen species. You soak up those reactive oxygen species by taking C60 and taking resveratrol and taking turmeric, because they're antioxidants. And you're bringing down inflammation by taking the ashwagandha and the turmerics. All right. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get those anti-aging boxes. It'll help to improve your longevity and improve your immune system. It's a win-win. You do it every day, you'll be amazed. You're gonna have more energy and you're gonna be healthier. Let's go back to the UN, where Satan seems to be, you know, having a busy day today.
Durable peace. And it is far past time for this council to hold Iran accountable for fanning the flames of war. Thank you, Madam President.
Je remercie la représentante.
You have been listening to the UN Security Council meeting that is going on. We'll be dipping in and out over the next hour or so at UN headquarters in New York. This is an emergency meeting that was called by France, and it's about the situation in the Middle East. There's not going to be a resolution, as our correspondent Gabriel Elizondo was reporting earlier. There's not going to be a resolution. There's not going to be a vote. The UN Security Council isn't really going to take action after this. This is an opportunity for major countries, members of the Security Council, to air their views on this conflict, where they stand on it, what are their
I find this
diplomatic priorities. And you just heard from the
I find
American
it very,
ambassador.
very interesting that they're doing this right before Rosh Hashanah.
What is happening in to this from just outside the White House, Kimberly. So I suppose this is the latest we have on the American position. Some of it is unchanged, right? It is enduring support for Israel's right to defend themselves. That's kind of your typical U.S. language, and then it is blaming Iran for what's happening.
Right. And it's almost astounding to hear some of the language that is being used by the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, when it's almost like words don't matter anymore. When you hear things like that Israel was acting defensively, and that that Iran is the state sponsor of terror. That when
the last I looked,
Israel,
Hezbollah was shooting a lot of rockets at Israel. Of course, Israel was defending itself. And what's wrong with knocking off, killing the command and control before you do ground operations? That seems like really good strategic planning to me.
Iran and the finger pointing and the blame, and so it's
this is what I'm
very
talking about.
one-sided
Negative
in terms of
Esau, right
language,
there,
which is not
right
unusual
there.
for the United States, because Israel, of course, is the United States ally. But the fact that none of this is acknowledged is so astounding, and for a United Nations that is increasingly intolerant of this U.S. position, it's surprising that there isn't a shift in tone from.
She knows that her bread is buttered over at Al Jazeera, so she has to toe the line, and she's having problems getting it out of her fucking mouth. Shit.
Still continuing to have this very strong position that it is going to staunchly defend its ally Israel, and it is working with the Israelis to caution and avert a Middle East regional conflict. But again, it is so tone deaf in terms of its language.
Kimberly, I was going to come to what the U.S. is doing on the ground in the region. So Israel has vowed to respond to Iran's attack. Iran launched some 200 missiles.
Hello, guys.
The U.S. has vowed to respond. I beg your pardon. Israel has vowed to respond.
Iran needs to be destroyed. The theocracy apparatus needs to be destroyed so the people of Iran can have a future. The world can't have Iran with nuclear weapons. Really bad idea for them to have nuclear weapons.
Jake Sullivan has vowed will happen for Iran. We know that there were U.S. naval destroyers that joined in terms of intercepting the missiles that were fired from Iran towards Israel. So the U.S. and Israel are very clear. They're working together. They are going to work on some sort of retaliatory measure, whether that's military, whether that's financial, whether that's some sort of action at the UN Security Council. But the bottom line in all of this is there is grave concern about what happens next. And that's what's being discussed right now. The gas prices in the United States, they are rising. That's a problem for this administration, given the fact that we're less than a month from the US election. So the bottom line in all of this is they are trying to avert a wider Middle East conflict, and it is becoming more and more challenging with each passing hour.
Just get the
Kimberly
job
Halkett, Al
done.
Jazeera's White House correspondent. Thank you very much for that. Don't go too far. We're likely to need to talk to you again very soon. Let's bring in Gabriel Elizondo, who's at UN headquarters in New York. Gabe, so far we've heard from the Secretary General of the United Nations. We've heard from France. We've heard from the US, the UK. I'm looking at the list of speakers. There are several more. We'll be dipping in to a couple of them. What stands out to you so far? Kimberly was sort of pointing out, you know, the starkly different tones from the earlier speakers, France, UK, Secretary General, and just now the US.
It's all talk and no action. That's what you get out of it.
Yeah, that's right. I think there's several things that stick out to me, but I want to also point out what's called Rule 37. This is where countries that are a party to a conflict can request to take part in Security Council meetings. Usually it's one or two countries that would make this request. In this case, we have 6 countries that will be represented at this meeting, are represented, that will be speaking: Lebanon, Israel, Iran, Syria, Iraq, and Italy. This shows you how widespread this conflict has become and how many other countries are now directly affected by this. Now you say, why Italy? The reason is because they have almost 1,000 peacekeepers in southern Lebanon as part of the UNIFIL, UN Interim Force in Lebanon, peacekeeping force there. So Italy clearly has something they want to say. Iraq, of course, Syria, Iran, for obvious reasons, Israel, and Lebanon. So that's number one, that how much we're seeing this spillover that we've been talking about for months and warning against, that is very much here. We're seeing it in real time. And I would say the other thing is we're getting a wide consensus here that we've been talking about a ceasefire in Gaza for months now. Now that is shifted to not only Gaza, but Lebanon. There's a clear understanding, if you will, by all of the speakers so far that we've heard, for the most part, that there has to be a cessation of hostilities in Lebanon, and it has to be immediate because of the human suffering there, of the people that are being displaced.
If Satan knows that if Israel wins and gets more land and the Temple Mount's rebuilt, Satan dies. So don't you think that Satan would say, I need a two-state solution. We need peace right away. We need a ceasefire right away. Look at all those babies that are being killed. Look at all the children getting killed. That's usually an ultra-liberal perspective. And the ultra-liberals keep on pushing abortion. So you can't have collateral damage in a war zone, but it's okay for a female to do late-term abortions. How is that philosophically consistent? It's not. All right, I'm going to go
Admiration.
I don't
and
really
support
hear what Algeria has to say. Let's go to Bloomberg here.
Introduce themselves to the American public, and the American public liked what they saw.
Henrietta, can you give us a sense? I'm trying to get a handle on this particular number. How many independent voters are each candidate trying to get at, each campaign trying to, and do we have a sense of how many they are?
It's about
Well, the independent voter
1% or
base is
2%.
actually a huge chunk of the pie as America has gotten polarized and voters have, flocked to the far left or the far right within their parties. A big chunk of America now qualifies themselves as independent voters. That's different than undecided. Undecided is now like 4%, 7% of the electorate. Those people have picked a horse and they're moving forward. Unfortunately, most likely the people who are undecided did not even watch last night's debate. So they're going to be getting their internals from what they see on the internet today. And it's probably not going to move the needle too much. If you have to think about presidential debate not moving the needle a whole lot, a couple points to Kamala Harris, it's very unlikely to me that the vice presidential debate last night is going to really change things for either ticket.
So it's October 2nd, if I'm not mistaken. And typically we talk about an October surprise when it comes to the election. Is the Iran-Israel conflict right now that October surprise?
I want to say yes. Obviously, the escalation that we're looking at right now and potential for the Middle East disruption is explosive to the point where we haven't seen it in decades. And, rapidly escalating and just waiting for Israel's response now. But the question last night was the first one out of the gate about how to respond to Iran. And I think what was interesting is that the electorate as a whole in America doesn't consider this a near-term issue or even something that ranks in the top 5 areas that they care about. It's, the economy followed by some combination of abortion and immigration, and then everything else sort of way underneath that. Foreign policy is just not a forte of American voters.
Henrietta, Kamala Harris has been out fundraising former President Trump. And in past election cycles, that would be really big news. Is that big news this time around?
I think it is, and I want to tie in a couple different components here. We have Hurricane Helene that went straight through Trump country in the Panhandle of Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina, with the exception of Asheville and like a couple of blue pockets. But the turnout campaign, not just on the day of the election, but right now as early voting has started, is something that all this fundraising is able to actually do. Kamala Harris's campaign has, a dozen field offices in certain states that are going to be pivotal to this election, where Trump has almost none. There are campaign volunteers that are getting paid $20 an hour to go out into the field and make sure that they're knocking on doors and getting people to the polls, getting their mail-in ballots sent. That's the kind of money that's being spent right now. And you're seeing it trickle down into the state races, which are now expanding the Democratic map into places they have no business being, Texas, Florida, Nebraska, and then also on the House side with an expansion of the race sort of exponentially in the last couple of weeks. And that's because of the massive fundraising campaign that the Harris campaign has generated. I think it, if my memory serves, it's $287 million in August to Trump's $84 million. So they're tripling their numbers.
$20 an hour for volunteer. That's pretty solid. But that's
Then
something.
that doesn't make them a volunteer.
It is true that feels odd, but maybe it's for-profit volunteering. Henrietta, when we take a look at the broader race in terms of Congress, Senate, and the House, where do we stand? What are some races that you're watching?
Well, my favorite part of this election is that we have the benefit of every single swing state also having a Senate race happening. I want to lay out 2 that I think are really important today, and maybe the VP debate can move the needle. In Arizona and Nevada, you see Kamala Harris's strength coming from the fact that she's pulling 13 to 15% of the Republican voter base. So in Arizona, 15% of voters that identify as Republicans are saying, you know what, not today, not for Trump, not for
You gotta be a fucking retard to vote for
They're going
Harris.
for DeLeo and they're going for Kamala Harris. And that's why she is even playing ball in a state like Arizona that used
So
to
you
be
got
deep red.
basically 15%. You got 15% of the Republican Party in Arizona that are a bunch of fucking retards.
By 10 in the latest polls on average, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. So the Senate candidates down ballot for the Democratic Party are pulling so far ahead of Kamala Harris, so far ahead of their Republican challengers, and not all of them are incumbents. Whether that's in Michigan or other states, there are Democratic Senate races being held in all these pivotal states that Kamala Harris must win. And I think it portends either a massive split election or additional votes that Kamala Harris can get in the final days of the campaign.
All right, Henrietta, thanks so much. We really appreciate it.
This country will be fucked
and director of
if
economic
Harris
policy
wins.
at Beta Partners, joining us there. You early voted already, didn't you?
I did. I just voted in yesterday, early and often. I'm a big believer in that. And I'm also happy that I'm not in a swing state, John. We're not in a swing state, are we, in New Jersey?
Well, don't say your vote doesn't. Every single vote counts.
Let's
emphasize.
That's why I dropped it early on.
Even though we're in New Jersey.
So, but in New Jersey, we're not a swing state, so we're not getting crushed by the political ads yet. But even the national buys are noticeable. But when you get a swing state, every local buy is on every station. You can't get away from it.
I can't imagine. I've always lived in New York, so I literally can't imagine. All right, coming up, we're going to talk about Nike is trying to wipe the slate clean here for the new CEO.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the anti-aging structural nano silver box. In that box, you get the Max 35, the probiotic, the structural nano silver soap, your choice of 5 different varieties. Manuka honey lozenges made from structural nano silver, or the elderberry zinc lozenges in a 21 count. You get the structural nano silver toothpaste, which is the best toothpaste that you can get, and the structural nano silver gel. It's a great buy. Again, you can purchase individual items if you don't want to purchase the anti-aging structural nano silver box, but you get some really good products with this anti-aging box. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. These anti-aging boxes will help to slow down the aging process, increase longevity. All right. Your energy levels will go up. You'll improve your immune system. So please go to my store and take a look at those anti-aging boxes. All right, let's go to Algeria.
Everyone, save for the Israeli occupier, seeks this end, this cycle of violence, and is working toward that end. So how long will the international community remain impotent in the face of Israel's defiance? How long will we fail to enforce full implementation of Resolution 1701, especially Israel's withdrawal from Lebanese territory, key condition for Lebanon's stability? Madam President, the Middle East urgently requires concerted actions from all of us, to find lasting, sustainable solution to its crisis. These solutions demand an end to Israeli occupation of Arab lands in Lebanon, in Syria, and the establishment.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. Esau thinks that they have the birthright to the land of Israel. And the birthright went to Jacob and passed on, and the Jewish people had to go through a lot of hardship in Egypt. And then the Exodus happened, and they wandered in the desert for 40 years, and eventually they went into the land. Esau didn't go do that. Esau wasn't foraged through the crucible of Egypt. It was Jacob. The Mount Sinai and the giving of the Torah wasn't to Esau. It was to Jacob. It's not their land. And this was predicted thousands of years ago, that the Jews were going to be expelled from the land and that they would come back. Well, guess what? They're back. So they go in commercial? Maybe I think they're going commercial. All right. So what I want to do is I'll talk about the skincare while we're waiting for them to get out of the commercial here. I find it very odd about this whole typhoon that's hitting Taiwan at the same time as all this stuff in the Middle East is happening, because I've been saying that what's going on in Europe, the Middle East, and in Asia are all connected. But proof positive again. All right, so in the anti-aging skin health box that I have for beginners, you get the collagen. You take this collagen, there's a big scooper, you mix it with food or with water or with milk, all right? And you take it every day, all right? It has a great amino acid profile for this collagen. Collagen is good for your skin, for your bones, for your joints, for your ligaments, right? Your tendons, for your hair, for your nails, all right? So it's dual purpose. But for your skin, to improve the dermal layer, you need to take the vitamin C that you get with this box, all right? And they'll cross-link when you drink filtered water, right? And it helps to build up connective tissue for your dermal layer, all right? That's important. So drink 32 to 64 ounces of filtered water. So you take the vitamin C every day and you take the collagen every day. And then before you go to bed, you put the silver gel on your skin. And then when you wake up in the morning, you exfoliate. And what you'll notice is your skin's healthier and tighter, especially around your face. There's a tightness that takes place, all right? So you do that every day, all right? That's the beginner's box. Now in the advanced box, you also get C60, your choice of extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, or avocado oil. C60 is a very strong antioxidant, so it'll soak up those free radicals in the basal layer. And the basal layer is where you generate new skin cells that'll come up, become keratinized, and then create the surface of your skin, okay? So you're improving your basal layer. And you also take resveratrol to help to improve your basal layer. This gets rid of senescent cells. So you're improving your basal layer, the health of the basal layer, and where the adult stem cells reside for your skin. You're cross-linking with the collagen and the C and the vitamin C for the dermal layer. And then you're improving the health of your topical layer by taking the structural nail silver gel. So that's what's in the anti-aging skin health advanced box. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get those skin care health boxes, all right? Or just purchase products individually if you don't want to get the box. If you just want the collagen, you can do that. But I'm telling you how to improve your skin health, all right? And it's comprehensive. It's not just like, well, just take one product and it's just going to improve your skin. No, I'm telling you how to improve it at the topical level, how to improve it at the epidermal and the dermal layer, and how to improve it at the basal layer. It's comprehensive. All right, let's go to Al Jazeera.
Hell, the Israeli move. All this after Iran launched nearly 200 missiles at military and security targets in Israel.
Sorry.
But Israel has vowed to retaliate. Al Jazeera's Zaina Hodder begins our coverage now from the Lebanese capital, Beirut, with the latest on the fighting on the Israel-Lebanon border.
Israel says its soldiers are operating in southern Lebanon. The military has released video showing its troops in border villages. It's also released photos of tanks in a ground operation it says aims to destroy Hezbollah's sites. Israel says soldiers engaged in hand-to-hand combat with the armed group, but Hezbollah says its fighters forced them to retreat from more than one axis along the 120-kilometer border. Israel media have reported deaths and injuries among the troops, who, according to Lebanon's army, advanced up to 400 meters before pulling back. Hezbollah is projecting confidence, and amid the rubble of a destroyed building in the southern suburbs of Beirut, a message of defiance was reiterated.
What happened today is only the tip of the iceberg. We're waiting for the Israeli enemy to reveal the total number of those killed among them. The number is high, but they're hiding this. Our resistant fighters are fully prepared to confront the enemy. Our command and control are fine. So are our resources. We assured the enemy this is the first round.
Hezbollah has been hit hard in recent weeks. Israel's strikes have been relentless, and the destruction where the group has a presence is significant. It has also lost much of its military leadership in assassinations, including Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah. But the group has made it clear it believes it can shift the balance of power.
بلش العدو الإسرائيلي يقوم بعمليات استطلاع بالقوة للنيران. The Israeli troops were probing Hezbollah's defenses. They're trying to locate the group's positions and their willingness to fight. Hezbollah's response was strong, and they were likely surprised by that. It seems they want to take control of a few kilometers along the border to use it as a negotiating card to impose their conditions.
The Israeli military has said it has no plans for a wider occupation, and its operation in Lebanon is about destroying what it says are tunnels and infrastructure on the border. But Hezbollah is showing its command and control structure is intact. It continues to fire rockets and missiles across the border, reaching the suburbs of Tel Aviv. Israel dominates the skies over Lebanon and operates with near impunity, capitalizing on its superior air power. But Hezbollah is still able to use its strategic weapons, and it has proven in previous confrontations that it has the advantage on the ground. This could only mean more violence, as mediation efforts are at a standstill. Zana Khuder, Al Jazeera, Beirut.
We have a team of correspondents covering all the latest developments. Gabriel Elizondo is at the United Nations in New York. Our White House correspondent Kimberly Halkett is standing by for us in Washington. We'll also be live with Hamda Salhout in the Jordanian capital, Amman. First, though, let's go to Imran Khan in Hasabia in southern Lebanon. Now, what is Hezbollah saying about how they managed to repel Israel's sort of infiltration of the territory near the border?
Well, there are two significant incidents today. I'll take you through the first one that happened at dawn in Udaysi. This was a infiltration by Israeli soldiers coming in slightly further than they had done before, and at that stage, Hezbollah ambushed them. It was the first face-to-face fighting that we've seen since Israel announced its ground offensive. Hezbollah were quickly able to push them back into Israeli territory. The second incident, slightly more serious, took place just a few hours ago in Yaroun, which is a town in southern Lebanon. Israeli forces came in, and what Hezbollah has said is that it surrounded them with improvised explosive devices, a bomb, which they let off, and they say that there were at least one person killed in that attack and several injuries. Those are two serious incidents. So Hezbollah are now very, very confident because they have managed to push the Israelis back, and they're seeing this as a strategic victory.
But Israel has also expanded its list of towns and villages in southern Lebanon it wants evacuated. Have those residents left those areas now?
'51 to be exact, and yes, they have. A lot of people have left those areas, and they're doing so in fear and in panic. Just a few hours ago, we heard an airstrike come in on the main Marjayun to Kokaba Road, which is just slightly in the distance there. That's one of the only way out of southern Lebanon under those evacuation orders. And then Israel has bombed it not just once, not just twice, but 3 times in 48 hours. Every single time, the Lebanese army engineers patch it up. But in the last attack, a Lebanese army engineer was actually injured. And that's, for the Lebanese army, a very serious incident. But would you want to travel along that road if you thought there might be an airstrike at any moment? It's really putting fear and panic into people.
Thank you very much. Imran Khan joining us there with all the latest. Let's head to Hamda Salhout, who's in Jordan's capital, Amman, because the Israeli government has banned Al Jazeera from reporting inside Israel. And so what more do we know about the Israeli soldiers who've been killed and injured in southern Lebanon?
Well, the Army has formally announced that 7 more soldiers and officers were killed, making today's total 8. They say that it happened in 2 different events in which 7 other Israeli soldiers were injured. But it just goes to show you this is what has happened after the first day of face-to-face combat between the Israeli military and Hezbollah fighters. There was a lot of apprehension within the Israeli security cabinet before this operation on the ground was even approved, before Israeli forces had invaded Lebanese territory. There was a lot of nervousness as to what Israeli forces were going to face on the ground, because even though they have a lot of fighting power from the air, on the ground, face to face with fighters from another country is a different story. The Army is saying that they are conducting small, localized, targeted raids, but it's still an invasion into Hezbollah territory here. So the Army is saying that they are still conducting their operations as planned, that they have plans for evacuations of more villages, that they're going to continue their airstrikes to assist with the Army on the ground. But nonetheless, this just goes to show you that the Army has supremacy in the air, but not so much on the ground as we've seen.
Has there been any further reaction from Israel about how they might respond now to the attack from Iran?
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is actually meeting with the top security officials within the country. He's with the Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, the Army Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi, and the heads of the Shin Bet and the Mossad. Those are the internal and external security agencies. Netanyahu said not even 24 hours ago that Iran will pay a price, that they made a huge mistake, and Israeli officials are now assessing what that response is going to be. Remember back in April when Iran had launched even a larger attack, almost double the size of what we saw last night, Israel had quite a muted response, and that was because of pressure from the United States and other allies from Europe and within the region itself. But Israel this time says that things are different and that they are surely going to be striking Iran with all of their power in an unforgiving way. But the Iranians, remember, have said that they don't want this conflict to escalate, but that this was a response to the crimes carried out by Israel in Lebanon, on Iranian soil, in Gaza, against the Palestinian people. But Israel says, nonetheless, that at a time and place of their choosing, there will be a response.
Thank you so much. From Amman in Jordan, Hamda Salhout reporting to us. Well, in terms of the international reaction to everything that's been happening, there's been an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council. The United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, has been speaking. He says that the situation must be de-escalated for the sake of the population.
Civilians are paying a terrible price, which I utterly condemn. The UN has mobilized all its capacities to provide urgent humanitarian.
What I want to do is I'm going to flip over to Bloomberg here.
Bias. You referenced a lot of the fiscal spend that's out there. There's a lot of stuff that's been targeted, and there's thumbtacks in it, but it's based on some of the numbers we're seeing, less than 20% of what's been allocated is actually out there. And one of the interesting things is you've got a lot of bonding bills on state and local ballots this fall, and to the extent those get passed, you've got a lot of spending teeing up that's matched by those federal funds. And so you've got the opportunity to really put some extra growth underneath a lot of these things. And so we think as that gets absorbed, that you'll see that the 10-year yields drift higher, not lower.
So Paul, you'll be so proud of me. I did email my guy and I was like, hey, so I have this money in my high yield savings. Should I put it in munis? I'm just saying.
I don't like her voice. She's so whiny.
Well, of setting up that sort of buffer zone between Israel and Hezbollah, where about 10,000 UNIFIL UN peacekeepers have been. He said, I'm wondering, in his words, I'm wondering what remains of the framework of the Council Resolution 1701, sort of questioning where do we go from here? Is that 1701 resolution still the foundation? That'll be something we'll be asking him and other diplomats about in the coming hours and days. Big questions to be answered there.
The conclusion seems to be that the attack from Iran last night on Israel, which Iran has described as self-defense, was much more significant to events that we saw in April. How much concern is there?
So the S&P 500 is going up and down. So now it's trading above 5,700.
And Israel?
Well, there's a lot of concern, and that's why this emergency meeting was called. And it's concerned by many parties, I should point out. It's Lebanon, of course, Israel, you've got Iran as well. And this is why they called this emergency meeting. This is why France requested it. France, of course, being a permanent member of the Security Council, but it was also Iran and Israel that wanted this meeting as well and requested it. It wasn't on the schedule until late last night. And so there is concern and there's real focus on trying to get to a ceasefire. This proposal that the US and France have put on the table, that as the Secretary General correctly pointed out, that Israel has so far rejected, but they're trying to gather enough diplomatic pressure to get to some cessation of hostilities in Lebanon, because I think there's a wide consensus by at least the countries that we've heard speaking so far that that is critical, of course. Of course, the one outlier here being the United States. We heard from their ambassador of the UN, Linda Thomas Greenfield, and she, of course, put a lot
Gabriel,
of
I'm just going to jump in there because
Iran.
we are now hearing from the Russian ambassador to the United Nations at this emergency meeting of the Security Council.
And the people of the friendly country of Lebanon who are undergoing an armed aggression, and we will send out heartfelt condolences to the families of those who died. We demand a full comprehensive implementation of Resolution 1701. It contains the obligations on Israel to end all the offensive military operations, to withdraw their military from southern Lebanon, and end the occupation of Lebanese territories, as well as obligations on Hezbollah to withdraw the units north of the Litani River. The Israeli side has to ensure rigorously the safety of the interim forces in Lebanon, who are undergoing unpredictable risks because of the Israeli incursion. We'd like to recall that the threats to the health and life of blue helmets could amount to a war crime. We also decisively condemn the killing of Nasrallah. We reject the fact that in order to eliminate him, a residential quarter in Lebanon's capital had 80 bombs weighing 1 ton dropped on it. As a result, 6 high-rise buildings were destroyed. How can you call this a discriminatory selective action here? This political elimination is fraught with catastrophic consequences for Lebanon and the Middle East as a whole. Western Jerusalem, I'm sure, understood that, but they intentionally decided to go ahead and do this. And this means that the Israeli side shoulders the full responsibility for the subsequent escalation and its consequences, including the consequences for the people of Israel. Within the framework of its mandate to maintain international peace and security, the Security Council has to make Israel immediately end the hostilities. And we all have the duty to make every effort to create the conditions for the political and diplomatic settlement. In this context, we note the signals sent by Tehran that do not wish to see a further.
Enough with Russia.
It's just a question, how much am I going to get paid?
At what price?
So this is a negotiating tactic here, and just going to try to negotiate, a better deal here. But but this at the end of the day, if you remember, the other part of this news of this deal, DirecTV and Dish merging, but then TPG Group, the private equity fund, is going to buy the 70% of DirecTV that it doesn't own.
Let me do a product placement while we're cycling to news here. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the anti-Fauci boxes. Why? Well, you don't want Fauci, do you? So go to the store and take a look at the anti-Fauci beginner's box. In the beginner's box, you get the Max 35. You get the D3 vitamin. You get the ashwagandha to bring down inflammation, turmeric, and magnesium and zinc to help to boost up your immune system. That's the beginner's box. And in the advanced box, you get everything in the beginner's box, but you also get C60. which is a very strong antioxidant. You can get it in extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, or avocado oil. Take a teaspoon of it a day. It's a very strong antioxidant, soaks up those free radicals and boosts up the health of your mitochondria. In the deluxe box, the anti-Fauci deluxe box, you also get everything that's in the advanced box, but you get 3 other supplements. The first one is lignans. Lignans is a powder. You mix it with your food or with your water. It helps to boost up your immune system. It also helps with hormonal health for males and females. This works by bringing down inflammation, and it's an antioxidant. You should be taking it every day to boost up your immune system. Omega-3 helps with your lipid profile, brings down LDL levels, increases your HDL levels. It also prevents your cells from sticking because lots of people have clotting issues. You need omega-3. Digestive enzyme complex. Not only does this help to break down carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids, it reduces the stress on your pancreas. That's really important because when you get older, you don't want to stress your pancreas. In addition, there are enzymes in here that will break down glycoproteins. I think that was really important in 2020 and the aftershock of 2020. And I also have enzymes in here that will break up clots that are fibrinolytic, like bromelain. So that's also important. And the beauty of this is that the digestive enzyme complex is synergistic with omega-3. The omega-3, like I said, prevents the red blood cells from sticking, so it doesn't clot so much. And the fibrinolytic enzyme in here helps to break up clots too. So I wonder why digestive enzyme complex and the omega-3 are in the anti-Fauci deluxe box. I am the most comprehensive person to build up a bundle so you can improve your health and get through the aftershock of 2020. Everything I have in this deluxe box, the structural nanosilver liquid neutralizes pathogens and improves your immune system. D3 gets cells to go into apoptosis that you do to die off. Turmeric brings down inflammation. It's an antioxidant. Ashwagandha brings down inflammation and controls your blood glucose levels. Lignans, antioxidant and brings down inflammation, boosts up your immune system. Digestive enzymes, fibrinolytic and glycoprotein, breaks down glycoproteins. Omega-3 helps to prevent those red blood cells from sticking. Magnesium and zinc boosts up your immune system. And a very strong antioxidant to bring down free radicals and to boost up your mitochondrial health. Because you're going to need mitochondrial health. You're going to need ATP to have a healthy immune system. This package is the most comprehensive that's out there to dealing with the post-2020 issue, what I call the aftershock. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. There's a lot of other people that do some little bundles, but nobody is as comprehensive as I am. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the anti-Fauci boxes. Why? Because they work. Let's go to Sierra Leone.
Diplomatic efforts in the Middle East. He said that Israel had been emboldened by unequivocal and unwavering military and financial support, which had sort of maintained an impunity, which has enabled the war on Gaza and also the continued airstrikes that we see right across the region, encompassing other countries, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen. As a result of this, he said the flame of conflict is growing wider. If something doesn't change now, he said it will reach an unimaginable level of escalation that will be harmful to everyone, and that includes Israel. He advised the United
Follow the Ribby. Ribby said, move forward, don't be afraid, and don't be hubris, and you will be victorious. If you don't do those three things, you will fail. And Israel has failed in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, and has been failing a big part of the 2020s. It's only been recently that they got their shit together. Don't fail. It was warned what to do. And if you don't, what happens? And it's proof positive. You'll look at the past, that if you don't move forward, don't be fearful, and don't be hubris, you will be victorious. But Israel decided not to. Israel decided to capitulate to the UN pressures. Israel decided to capitulate to the US pressures because of expedience, political expedience, or maybe economic expedience, because they were worried about oil prices or whatever. Don't fail. Don't fail this time. Because if you don't fail, then you are increasing the probability of the death of Satan.
To North and South Carolina. So he's managing two crises at the same time. And he's also under enormous pressure domestically right now, during 1 month before an election, given the fact that he's under pressure because there are many critics here in the United States that say he shouldn't be focusing so much on Israel right now, that he should be focusing on the flood victims here in the United States, and that they should be taking top priority. The 150,000 that have been affected, some who've lost their homes and everything as a result of Hurricane Helene. So there's multiple crises that this president is managing, and there's also accusations on Capitol Hill of the same tenor, that the members of Congress are more concerned about Israel than they are about their own citizens. So this is a very complex dilemma for the U.S. president, but there's no question that the top priority for Joe Biden is trying to avert a broader Middle East conflict, something that is now even more imminent. The fact that they have come to Israel's defense, and that they are now assessing that sort of battlefield damage. The United States working in concert with the Israeli officials to decide whether or not Israel needs to retaliate against this Iranian attack. They were successful in persuading Israel not to do so last April, but it seems less likely that the United States will be successful in persuading Israel this time.
Okay, Kimberly, thank you very much. Our White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett, reporting to us from Washington. You are with the News Hour live from Doha. There is much more to bring you on this program. We're looking at Tunisia and how the country's president is hoping to secure another term in office when voters head to the polls later on Sunday. And there's been another very...
I'm going to go back to Bloomberg here.
The floodgates, and we can, increase our production up so high that prices will go down maybe to 50 and maybe even lower, as we've seen in the past, and that will have a major impact on the ability of these other countries to bring in revenue. But for the Saudis, it's really not that big a deal. They can take it, whereas those countries will really significantly be hurt. And so I don't think that this is a threat that they're making idly, but I don't think it's around the corner. I think you have to have some pretty severe actions, to see the Saudis go through with this.
Yeah, and then to that point, their break even for oil prices is super low, but their fiscal break even is like 85. So they can just pare back spending domestically if they needed to support that. The last time they flooded the market, it was to hurt shale producers, and I find it interesting that this time, if they wind up sort of rolling back those cuts, it's to force compliance among its own members. It's an interesting twist. Before we let you go, How much geopolitical risk premium is in the oil price right now, and how much you think should be in the oil price right now?
So that's a great question. I do think there is some geopolitical risk premium. We've seen prices reacting to events, maybe, 2%, 3% is geopolitical risk premium. I think, it's hard to kind of divvy that up between the Middle East, between Russia. I think that any kind of risk premium that's associated with the idea that Iran might say, close the Strait of Hormuz is really not well-founded, because this is not the same environment that we saw in the 90s or the 80s, or even the early 2000s. Iran is not going to close the Strait of Hormuz. It's not even clear they can physically do that, but doing so would so anger China. And China is now the main customer of, it's Iran's main customer, it's Saudi Arabia's main customer, it's the main customer of all of the Middle East oil producers. And that would so anger China that
China.
They
can't believe
would
she
be
said
devastating. So I don't see any reason why Iran would do that. I do think that there is an elevated risk in the Red Sea, and that's really where analysts should be keeping an eye on in terms of the potential for some serious disruption.
All right, Ellen, thank you so much for joining us. Ellen Walsh, she is a president at Transversal Consulting and a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. She's one of our go-to voices on all things global oil, and we're seeing oil pare back some of the day's gains that had been up close to 2.5%, 3% on WTI and Brent crude, and they're now both up only about 0.5% here. So we'll keep an eye on global energy market. Another thing we're keeping an eye on is the deal market.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Good Night Formula. Take this supplement. It will allow you to get into 3 cycles of REM sleep, get deep sleep, be well rested. When you're in deep sleep, you're detoxifying your central nervous system and your other cells in your body, which is very important, and you're consolidating memory. Go to my store and take the Good Night Formula each night, especially if you are not getting enough sleep. All right, it's really important. Part of the anti-aging protocol is getting enough sleep and to be well rested. Chronic sleep deprivation can lead to early dementia and neurodegeneration. So you don't want that, trust me. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Good Night Formula. Olive leaf extract, which is a new product on my store. It's a dual purpose product. It'll improve your cardiovascular system and your immune system. Please go to my store and get the olive leaf extract. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. It's really important to detoxify your body. Now, you can detoxify your body several different ways, but one great way is with zeolite. Zeolite is a negatively charged molecule that'll soak up positively charged heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals. All right? It binds and then allows you to urinate that toxin out in about 6 to 8 hours. You can detoxify your body throughout the whole year. Just take a couple drops underneath your tongue, drink it with filtered water, and do that year round. Or you can just detoxify your body once or twice a year. It's up to you. If you're going to do it once or twice a year, take a few drops underneath your tongue and, use up the whole bottle, and then do that maybe once or twice a year. It's up to you. But you do get better. You get, higher efficacy if you do it every day, because you're exposed to toxins every day. If you're taking medication, you need to talk to your doctor first, because zeolite might bind to your medication. So if it binds to your medication, that means it's lowering your concentration levels. So your physician may have to give you a higher dosage of your medication if you want to detoxify your body. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get zeolite. It's also important to stop the ingestion of these toxins. Make sure you filter your water, and make sure that you eat good quality food. Stop eating the processed foods and the packaged foods. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. When you detoxify your body, you're going to have a better endocrine system, and you're going to have a better immune system. What's China have to say? China.
Today, Israel launched ground offensive and military incursion into Lebanon. Israel also launched intensive airstrikes against Syria. Iran has also concluded a series of military attacks on the military and security targets in Israel and sent correspondence to the Security Council explaining its position. China is deeply concerned and extremely worried about the current grave situation and the prospect for further developments. We call for effective respect for the sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity of all states. We reiterate our opposition to all acts that violate the basic norms of international relations and condemn all violence and attacks against civilians. We share the position of the United Nations that any Israeli crossing into Lebanon violates the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Lebanon and contravenes the provisions of the Security Council Resolution 1701. Since last October, the cycle of violent conflict has been repeating itself in the Middle East. Israel, in total disregard for the call of the international community for an immediate ceasefire, single-mindedly advances its military operations, resulting in the projection and expansion of the conflict. At present, an all-out war is on the verge of breaking out. At this critical juncture, any inflammatory statements and provocative actions are extremely dangerous and could easily lead to miscalculations and chain reactions, escalate the situation.
Really, China? They want to tell Israel, stop fighting Hezbollah in Lebanon, and tried to prevent them from going to the biblical borders. Okay. What about you trying to take over Taiwan? So Israel can't go to its biblical borders, but it's okay for China to go to its historical borders. Yeah. Okay. I understand now. Thanks, China. China.
For the conflict, to respect the red lines of international humanitarian law, and to protect civilians. We support the efforts of the UN humanitarian system to take urgent action to ease the...
China is so worried about the humanitarian issues in the Middle East. But what about the Uyghurs in China? Anyone want to talk about the Uyghurs in China? I'm pretty sure that they're having a problem.
The Security Council bears an important responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. Under the current circumstances, the Council must act urgently and be united in making demands clearly and unequivocally that an immediate ceasefire must be established in Gaza. The de-escalation of the violence must be stopped, and the de-escalation of the Lebanese and Israeli situation must be advanced.
What if Israel decides to destroy the oil capability in Iran? China will have problems with getting its oil. Oh.
Consequences. We hope that major countries with important influence will adopt a sincere and responsible attitude and earnestly play a more constructive role and avoid further turmoil of the situation. I thank you, President.
Je remercie le représentant de la Chine.
I thank the representative of China, and I give the floor to the representative of Ecuador. Thank you, Madam President. Allow me first and foremost to...
All right, so we're just hearing from the Chinese ambassador to the United Nations during this emergency meeting of the Security Council following a major escalation of developments in the Middle East. The Chinese ambassador saying we are at a critical juncture and on the verge of an all-out war in the region. He called on all parties, including Israel, to pull back from the brink. But he also spoke about what has been an unprecedented humanitarian disaster in Gaza. He referred to Gaza as being an inferno.
October 3rd, all right? Because I'm recording this on October 2nd. October 3rd in the morning is when the shofar blows, all right? Before noon, all right? When that blows, there's going to be a blessing that happens to Jacob, and all shit's going to hit the fan in the Middle East. And the Muslims that are really religious, all right, they know the metaphysics of what's going on here. They get it. And that's why they're worried. Because it's their Achilles heel.
Yes, I think Israel, Netanyahu feels obliged to retaliate. I think his government, his very right-wing government, will not allow him not to do so. And I think, generally speaking, and following what we are hearing here in the Security Council, I think Israel lost any room for maneuver diplomatically. It knows from the beginning, from October 7th onward, it knows only the language of force. Now, this is not completely new in Israel, but I think what happens now in this year, and especially we are seeing it in the last 3 weeks, is that Israel speaks only the language of force and does not really know how to maneuver politically, how to avoid.
No, what it is Netanyahu was told in the 80s by the Rebbe not to do something. The Israelis did what he warned them not to do, and now fast forward to 2024. All right. And they're in the problem that they're in. And Netanyahu is going, you know what? Maybe the Rebbe was fucking right in 1980s. And that's what's happening.
The US could do it quite easily. It did so.
These talking heads are a bunch of dumbasses.
When President Reagan told Prime Minister Begin, who was also quite extreme right, to pull off from Beirut, and he did.
And that's where it all went wrong.
We have seen so also during the Bush.
The United States had a bombing of its Marines in the 80s, and America ran.
Question, of course, is are you ready to use it? This is quite doubtful. You know, in the last days, they're talking very strange words. They're saying, yes, we support Israel's right to invade South Lebanon, but we want a diplomatic solution. It doesn't go together, these assertions. So it's very unclear.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with what you've just said and the way you referred to the 1982 and the pressure that we had from President Ronald Reagan on Menachem Begin. But you know, I suppose the point I was trying to make is that you have a very different group of people right now in Israel who are running this government. The circumstances have changed considerably, no?
Yes, certainly. I'm not saying this is easy. I'm not saying that this is easy. I do think still that if the US will put all its weight, I think it will be quite difficult for Israel to continue the war. Certainly the weight will be on the army, because the army feels very much, the close relationship with the US. The army depends on the bonds, on the ammunition it gets from the US. So the army, if there is some cat in this chain, the army will be very first, and the army may push the government to agree. So
that's interesting. So, Marek, can I ask you, what do you? In that case, can I ask you, what is the position then of the defense and the security establishment there?
We have seen that the security establishment regarding Gaza, at least, was quite favorable of a deal to release the hostages, practically to end the war. It did not have it's
Doesn't
safe.
solve the
It
problem.
did not manage to do so. In Lebanon, it's a little different. In Lebanon, as there are no hostages, the army is very much the army's war. It's very much the classical army's war of deterrence, as Israel is using, is used to in the last 25 years. So Lebanon's war is more an army war, but if the situation in Lebanon will get more complicated, and we have seen today 8 Israeli soldiers and officers killed on the first day of the invasion, this could also be quite difficult for the army. So yes, the army is could agree to a ceasefire. Of course, the decision is not by the army. We are not a military state so far. It's by the politicians. But the army could put pressure on Netanyahu if the Americans will. But we don't see it for now.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Maren Rappaport. Appreciate it. It's important to hear, for us to hear.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the nattokinase. This is fibrinolytic. It'll break up clots. It'll also bring down your LDL levels and your HDL levels. That means that it's going to improve your lipid profile and your cardiovascular health. Ubiquinol, the active form for CoQ10. I've been taking ubiquinol for many years. All right. It's neuroprotective, so it helps with your neural health. It's an antioxidant, and it'll help to increase your energy levels. This is synergistic with C60 and resveratrol. So please make sure you take ubiquinol. You should be taking this every day if you want to have healthy mitochondria and healthy neurons. NAD plus also boosts up your energy levels, and it helps to repair your DNA damage. That's important, especially when you get older. So please take the NAD plus, boost up your energy, help to repair your DNA damage, and it helps to protect your neurons. It's synergistic with ubiquinol. Why? Because they both are increasing your energy levels in different ways. They're both neuroprotective. And NAD plus, on top of it, helps to repair your DNA damage. Very important, especially when there's turbo cancer all over the place. Vitamin K2, MK7. This is a dual purpose product. It's going to help with your bones, for bone health, for joint health, but also for your cardiovascular health. Follow the protocol. It's synergistic with D3. I've mentioned how to improve osteoarthritis by taking K2. All right. I've also told you how to improve your cardiovascular health by reducing plaque. So pay attention. NAC, very important to boost up your glutathione levels. Why? Because glutathione is a very strong antioxidant, and it's also synergistic with C60. The more ways that you soak up those free radicals, the better. Why? Because you don't have cellular damage. NAC also helps to calm you down. So, if you have anxiety issues, and NAC helps to detoxify your liver and your kidney. Take NAC every day, soak up those free radicals by boosting up your glutathione levels. You should be taking this every day. I have it in my overall protocol. And lastly, because we're going to end this transmission, because I'm tired, Myotrol. Myotrol helps to build muscle and to maintain muscle. It also improves the health of your mitochondria, because you need a lot of ATP to be able to build muscle and maintain muscle, for those muscle contractions. So take Myotrol every day to help maintain muscle and build muscle. That's important, especially when you get older, because when you get older, you start to atrophy, and you don't want to atrophy. So to slow down that aging process, take Myotrol. That's the end of this broadcast. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Make sure that you ask your social media to follow me so I can reach a larger audience. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.